A Mochi Moment from Sadie, who writes, I'm not crying, you're crying. This is what I said during my first appointment with my physician at Mochi, because I didn't have to convince him I needed a GLP-1. He understood, and I felt supported, not judged. I came for the weight loss and stayed for the empathy. Thanks, Sadie. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi Moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Sadie is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
I'm no tech genius, but I knew if I wanted my business to crush it, I needed a website now. Thankfully, Bluehost made it easy. I customized, optimized, and monetized everything exactly how I wanted with AI. In minutes, my site was up. I couldn't believe it. The search engine tools even helped me get more site visitors. Whatever your passion project is, you can set it up with Bluehost. With their 30-day money-back guarantee, what do you got to lose? Head to Bluehost.com. That's BLUEHOST.com to start now.
Home of Indiana University, rock quarries, cornfields, enchanted woods, and injury lawyer Ken Nunn, Bloomington is a town that has a term for its ability to lure one-time residents back, the bloomerang. There's something weirdly magical going on here, and college town nobodies Josh Bennett and Chris Coopersmith are going to get to the bottom of this place by listening to stories and riding every possible tangent along the way.
My mom had surgery last Wednesday, I think it was, in Carmel.
Oh, okay.
And so I've been driving back and forth there. It's a fucking bitch.
It's a bitch.
Yeah.
And there's so much construction and bullshit going on right now.
So much. Yeah.
Doesn't it make you appreciate not living in Indianapolis?
Oh, so much, man. So much. Because I even I walk to work and stuff. So I'm like,
right.
Now I feel like I'm too old to do that. Like, it's like when I'm on 465, I'm like, what the fuck?
You're scared, kind of scared.
Almost scared, yeah. I'm like, what the shit? There's like 17 lanes here.
Right.
I'm just going to stay right here.
I know. That's really funny. I guess that's how it happens.
I know, yeah. This is like first stage. It won't be long that I'll be doing that same thing, except I'll be driving like 45 miles an hour.
And in like 5 years, you'll be like, Grace, I cannot visit you in Chicago anymore.
Can't do it.
Just can't get there.
Right. The Uber won't take me that far.
In the nursing home's van, they said they won't drive me there. So
right. Medicare won't cover it.
Yeah, I was in Indianapolis a better part of last week for multiple reasons, and I had to drive home pretty late at night the other night. And when I got home, I told Jane that, like, because there's all that construction stuff, and I swear to God, I felt like I was in a video game. Like it was like trying to drive with those concrete things on the sides, you know.
What was that game? It was like pole position or something?
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a freaking pole position or something like that. Yeah. So what kind of shit have you been thinking about? How are you? Is your trip good?
Yeah, man. Well, I'm not much of I don't consider myself much of a beach kind of vacation guy. Like I
totally understand.
I'm good for it for like a day or two, and then I kind of want to do something else. And
you get a little restless. Yeah,
I get a little restless. However, this time, like around day 3 or day 4 of it, I fucking adjusted. Like,
did you?
Yeah, like we were there for like 10 or 11 days
at the beach.
Just at the beach, and then I adjusted well. Like I had this like mental thing that I was just like, I am not going to complain about anything. Like I'm away from work. That's going to be my mantra. Is I'm not going to complain. And like anytime I felt like a complaint, is like I'm just wasting my time thinking about it since I'm not going to complain. So I just kind of like was able to sort of like wipe it away from my mind pretty quickly. And then I just slowed down and slept like 9 hours a night. Took naps. Like, fuck, I don't live that way here.
No.
Opposite of how I live here.
Right.
And I think some of it has to do with like mentally is like nobody has a gun. Nobody does.
Really?
Yeah. That's an amazing relief that I think it's kind of on my mind is like all the time is like most, you go to Lowe's, a good chunk of those people are carrying packing. Yeah, guns are illegal there's no care that you can't carry guns.
Jeez.
Even some of the police can't carry guns.
Really?
But anyway, just having that in my mind is probably extra relaxing.
Man, I would not have predicted that's what you're going to say. That's really interesting. No, I mean, I just didn't. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I just didn't realize it was. I mean, I didn't realize it was something that was on your mind in particular, or in the back of your mind. I mean, I'm sitting here trying to think if it's in the back of my mind, but maybe it's the knowing that they're not there.
That's what that's what I think it is. Like, it's not something I think about all the time, and or even worry about it all the time. If anything, I'm almost like, well, there was another school shooting, and then I'm like, okay, well, what else happened last night? You know, almost like breeze through that shit now. But just, I think what was sort of on my mind was the fact that there was no guns there, rather than there's being on my mind that there's always guns here. Just being somewhere where there's just no guns is pretty cool.
So sad. So sad. And it's amazing, like how, well, I don't know, we can go into the gun thing, but it seems like it's not really a good, fruitful discussion.
Right. We'll get shot if we go into it too deep.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
We played that Situation Grey reunion show on Friday night.
Oh, how'd that go?
It was fucking awesome.
Really? Were you rock stars again?
Totally. And
that's awesome.
Not only that, but I just decided, and it was barely a decision, but it was just like these people, you know, they planned in advance. You know what I mean? Like they traveled from Arizona and Houston and fucking England and shit, and they are there for the show. So like the minute we walked out, you know, there were 400 people staring at us, you know. That's amazing. Yeah, and so it was just like, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I'm going to give the best show of my life. And I fucking gave it 110%. That's like, I was going crazy up there, and I didn't really know how it felt good and everything felt great, but apparently like it worked. Like it really was like, my band was like, dude, you did it. Like you really, you know what I mean? That's awesome. It was really, really cool. It was really fun. It was also awesome just because people were posting on Facebook afterward, and like one woman posted this big long thing about just, you know, hey, we were the ones who used to be, because they all know they have like their place in the bar, you know, where they used to hang out. Like we were the ones that she said, we were the ones who would dance in a circle off to the left of the speaker, you know, in the 90s and blah, blah, blah. But we graduated to the balcony this year because they were selling like tables up in the balcony for like $150 or something at the Vogue. And then she said, also, we want to let you know that we most of our group was there, but Chad and Jim weren't there. And we also, unfortunately, our friend Elizabeth wasn't here because she passed away tragically. So they're like, you know, so one of us wore her Doc Martens and the other one wore her little purse that she used to bring to Situation Grey shows, and it was like this kind of tribute to their friend. That's so cool, man. And you know, it's so just like cool. Yeah, and we had a lot of people come up to us, like almost more than the last reunion, who were just like saying like, thank you, like you guys, you know, were such a big part of my, you know, my memories, and you just a lot of good times, and just really big, like you saying you guys were so important, and I'm just like, you know, these people, this is just like good, clean fun. These are just happy people who had a great experience, you know. You meant something so much to them during their time in Bloomington. Yeah. During their college years or whatever, that they all came back to kind of like, you know, it's something that really meant something to them. I don't know what your framework is for what you remember of that band, but one of the things that became really clear, and I think it wasn't on purpose, but that we didn't do it on purpose, but it became clear pretty quickly, is that like the gay community really loved us because, you know, we were playing a lot of like techno and stuff like that, Depeche Mode, Erasure, and stuff like that. And so we had a lot of gay people coming to our shows. And, you know, I don't know that I thought a lot about it at the time. I recognized that was true. And I got called gay, like I got called gay as an insult a lot back in the day when I was in the band. But now, just thinking about, you know, how different things were in the 90s in terms of what, you know, being gay, you know, and thinking about like, so there's a couple songs. One of them's How Soon Is Now by the Smiths, you know, and it's just a fucking awesome song. But as I was singing it, I was really paying attention to the words, because a lot of times I don't, you know, it's rote and I'm just performing and I'm not really processing. But I was paying attention to the words. You shut your mouth. How can you say I go about things the wrong way? I'm human and I need to be loved just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then there's the song It's a Sin by the Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah.
When I look back upon my life, it's always with a sense of shame. I've always been the one to blame. But anyway, it's just basically like their existence is a sin. They just can't,
Right.
But what I realized is that we were singing these kind of gay anthems of like that, you know what I mean? Like we were kind of part of making a safe space for gay people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which feels really, really awesome, and you can totally see it in our crowd.
They got to hear the songs that meant something to them live.
Right. That meant something to them privately in their dorm rooms or in their rooms in their apartments. Right.
Yeah.
But come together, and it was like a public thing. And it was like I said, it wasn't by design, but I'm pretty proud of it just because, all the other bands were doing like classic rock.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. I willingly accept like the kind of the hilarity of a cover band. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it is what it is, but it's like the idea of just like we're gonna pick all these songs and we're gonna try as hard as we can to sound like them. And I feel like I'm the one who's in the most vulnerable spot because I'm trying to imitate singers. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not just like I'm going to play the guitar part. It's like, holy shit, I'm singing Purple Rain in front of 500 people right now. Like this could be very embarrassing. You know what I mean? Or whatever. And then now I'm going to sing like They Might Be Giants right after I sang Purple Rain. Right. It's dumb.
Did you
fun.
play? Did you just like embrace all the classics that you did before, or were there songs that you're like, man, we can't play this song?
There was one.
Really?
There was one, and I put my foot down about it. Yeah, because I was trying, like I said, I was trying to just have a good attitude, and there are songs that I'd probably be like, Jesus, come on, guys. But I just said I was like, I will do whatever,
Yeah.
That song by 9 Inch Nails called "Closer." I wanna fuck you like an animal. I was like, It's not even honestly like, I don't really want any video of me singing that.
Yeah.
It's just such a gross song. Like, you know what I mean? It's just gross and stupid and embarrassing.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not doing it. And they were like, well, can we have a guest singer? And I was like, sure, go ahead. And so they got this guy named Sean who was in this band called the House Marys around the same time as us in the 90s.
I remember that band.
And he sang the shit out of it, and I like literally left the stage.
You should have stayed on the stage and did the eyebrows to somebody.
That is what I'm doing next time.
Yeah, Situation Grey was the very first band that I saw as a 21-year-old.
God, you told me that, but I forgot that.
Yeah. That was I like barely knew you at that point. Mm-hmm. And it was at the Bluebird.
Yeah.
I remember the first part of that night. The end.
Right.
I turned 21, went to the Bluebird, and the next thing I know, I was 35.
And you had a lot of nights that you remembered the first parts of.
Right. Oh, shit.
Should we talk about our guest?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so this is going to be Simeon Rodgers, who when I think of, or actually for Bloomington people who have spent time in the west side, like the near west side, which is actually, it's funny because it's not, where he lived is probably blocks from the Mary's RoboCop house.
He was probably RoboCop.
No, dude, I think I saw RoboCop at the Flaming Lips show.
Really?
Yeah.
It was Simeon.
So for people on that side, for the longest time, you'd be walking down 6th Street, West 6th, and there's this house that is just surrounded by giant tall bamboo that I know for a fact pisses the city of Bloomington off. They're constantly coming after him. And so it's just this house surrounded by bamboo, and you smell clove cigarettes, and you can smell them for a block. And then you and then you hear classical piano coming out from it, and it's just this whole thing. And so that's Simeon. For anybody who remembers walking down 6th Street and having that experience, that's the guy we're interviewing. And I was sitting with him I don't know. He's probably my parents. He's my parents' age, our parents' age. He's probably like in his mid 70s. And anyway, I was sitting with him the other day, and he just kind of launched into this. I think it was his birthday, and I'd come over with some food or something, and he was just pensive, and he just kind of launched into this thing about his story. And I remembered how wild it was that this total farm boy just kind of accidentally ended up at the IU music school, and I thought it'd be cool to talk to him.
Yeah. That story in itself is almost like a some kind of Hollywood movie. Like some nobody on a farm takes an interest, finds a piano and a book, and takes interest in it, and becomes really good at it on his self-taught mostly.
Oh God, that's so true. It's totally like a long shot movie scenario. Except for, I guess he'd probably have to, in the movie, he would end up being, playing at Carnegie Hall or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, like I met Simeon, I don't know, I think I met Simeon when I was in my mid to late 20s. And it was just, for me, I just find that in our lives that we, especially in those years, that you kind of find like a spiritual father or a spirit, somebody who's not your dad, that is offering, is able to offer things that your dad couldn't, which is totally fine. It's just, you know what I mean? Did you have
like
that?
Just an older, wiser, figure.
Yeah. You've had that?
Yeah.
For me, it's like a couple. If you think of it, let me know. Because for me, there are actually a couple of them. Like one of them was. There are really kind of three, but the two that I'll mention, one of them was this guy, David Mowry, who, when I was 19 years old, and I was sort of accidentally, started playing cover songs in the Bluebird, we played, it was called Jerry's Happy Hour. There was this old bartender named Jerry, this old man, like an old man who had been bartender forever. And he did a happy hour, and people would come in for Jerry's happy hour, and my band played at like 5 o'clock at the Bluebird, in the afternoon.
Right.
And I met David, and he was this guy who was, what's funny is that I think he was probably in his 30s or something, in his mid 30s at the time, but he seemed like an old, and I met him, and he was just totally my portal. He was the manager of the Bluebird, and he was just my portal into like gardening. Like he taught me to love weeding a garden bed, like I just have so many memories of leaning down in his garden bed over on the west side, and just kind of like watching him, weed his garden, and then eventually I was down there weeding, and it was like, oh, this is really fucking pleasant, to pull little tiny weeds out from between the plants, Yeah. Do you like weeding?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you talking about this made me remember who this wiser person was. But it's kind of the guy.
Okay.
But he's my uncle Scott Wolfeld.
Oh my God!
And the reason that I'm bringing him up is that he was like the first person when I was younger that I felt like, oh yeah, I kind of get what he's doing. Like I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
Because he lived in some cabin. He was collecting his own water. He was like, harvesting trees and gardening. Whereas like in my family, it was like going to go out in nature was to go spend about $150 at Kroger and get whole pies and and tons of trash and go to Spring Mill, sit on a picnic table, eat for 35 minutes and go home.
Well, wait, before you go home, you have to fill up a giant fucking trash bag with all the trash you just produced. Yeah. And then just throw it in the dumpster.
Throw it right in the dumpster.
Including whatever food you didn't eat and everything.
You might take a walk and go see a couple of the houses, but you're not really, doing anything.
But Scott, he was like a back to the lander.
He was a total back to the lander, and I'm like, I kind of felt like this dude is the first person in my family that I feel like I'm kind of similar to in a way.
That's cool.
Yeah. But sorry that I kind of went off.
No. I'm so glad you brought it up. In
direction.
fact, Scott, I know him through sustainability work and stuff like that. But he, the land that he owns off of 446 somewhere, I met this whole world of human beings who lived on his land, and they called it home woods. And you had to walk 3/4 of a mile down into a valley to get to this little land. And there was like a main house that was like this kind of stone home that somebody built down there. And then there was these little cabins. What they called one the Thoreau cabin because it was like 8 by 10. And then there was one that was called like the Dome House or something. They were tiny little things, and different like sort of punk hippie people lived down there. And I just kind of got tied into that scene in my early 30s. Like I met a bunch of these people, and so one of them was this woman Hannah Schuler and this guy Brett Volpe, who are still both around, and they had their baby Ramona Moon in one of the cabins, and because it was a full moon, and when Hannah was like in this cabin giving birth down, you couldn't even drive down there. Like there was no way an ambulance, nothing, because it was 3/4 of a mile down. And when she was having Ramona, these coyotes came and surrounded the little cabin because they smelled the stuff. Whoa. And they were howling outside the cabin while she was giving birth to
crazy.
Yeah, giving birth to Ramona, And then Brett Volpe, who do you know Brett?
I know Hannah.
You know Hannah? Yeah, you guys probably go way back. There's a great picture of you guys partying in like Florida or something crazy, isn't there?
Yeah, when we were like 16 or 17.
That shit is going in the show notes. That's a classic picture.
Which I remember on that Florida trip was my very, very first time that I saw Flaming Lips on TV.
What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, they were in Florida at Daytona. I didn't see them live, but they were super close, and that was when they did that Vaseline song.
We started talking about Simeon. Oh, spiritual father. It was spiritual. I was just going to say that's what ended up happening was that I'm sure we'll talk about it with Simeon. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we'll talk about it with Simeon, but just that he ended up becoming, other than David, the Bluebird guy, like he became my other spiritual sort of father, and this guy who.
So you met him and you were in your 20s?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you've kept in touch with him since?
Yeah, like he moved to Arizona. He moved to Sedona, not like after a while, many years, but he was in Sedona for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I went out there a couple times. In fact, I went out there once when I was just fucked. Like I was in like a crazy, speaking of paralyzed, I was paralyzed with anxiety. Like it was
really,
yeah. Like I peeled myself off the couch and was like, I am terrified to get an airplane right now because I'm afraid I'm going to have just a crazy panic. You know what I mean? Like but I got to go because I don't have to do it myself. And like, he makes me somehow feel better, Yeah. I don't know how. And I'm like, I just got to get to Simeon. And so I got on the plane. I made myself get on the plane and flew to Arizona. And then I drove from Tucson or whatever to Sedona, wherever it was. And then, he lived on this little shack up on a hill overlooking Sedona, which Sedona is a pretty fancy place. I don't know if you've been there, but have you been there? Mm-mm. But it's where they say that has the energy vortexes, and it's a real spiritual town. Mm-hmm. They say they have energy vortexes out in the desert, and it's very beautiful. Red rock, it's a beautiful place. And right. But anyway, he just lived in this tiny little, like real little shack, and there were wild boars running around, and it's just awesome. But I went out there, and I remember he had me close my eyes and imagine like what my anxiety looked like, and it was like it was a blob with tentacles, and he had me sort of relate, like communicate with that blob, and it was this whole thing. And he's not trained to be some sort of spirit like therapist. It was just, I don't know what the fuck it was even was, but he was walking me through this thing, and it was like I remember just sitting in a lawn chair watching the wild boars, talking to Simeon, listening to play classical piano. He just saved my fucking
that's
life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the thing with him was that he was just one of those people who either probably by necessity just didn't go along with the program in the life program, and I think that's a valuable kind of person, you know, to be around. Somebody who's just calling bullshit on all the things that we, you know, that we generally think have to happen. You know, like you got to have a house and you got to do it this way and you got to have a job this way and you got to think about the world this way. And I remember he told me, he said a couple things, but one of them is he said that the way that he deals with people just acting, being stupid and acting stupid and doing dumbass things. Yeah. He just thinks of them like animals at a zoo. And instead of like thinking like, what an asshole thing, he thinks more like, oh, that's an interesting thing to do. Like that monkey just climbed the tree and punched the other monkey in the face. And he just like observes human behavior and he finds it just fascinating, like you would at a zoo.
Rather than making a judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And
more
I was like,
just an observer of life.
Exactly. And I was like, that is awesome. You know, just to sit there and instead of being like, that's an asshole, be like, man, that guy just, you know, whatever. That, you know, that woman just pinched that guy's ass and said that wasn't an accident or whatever, you know. Like you just watches it all go by, you know.
That's amazing.
I love it.
I would love to have more of that.
Dude. Right? And I remember at that very meeting when I went out there to Arizona, he said, part of what I was dealing with is what we all deal with is feeling, you know, less than and like and not deserving. And he goes, you are no more unacceptable than he said, you are no more unacceptable than a cow walking in a pasture. And he was like, the cow's just walking pasture because that's just what they're doing. They're not thinking about whether it's right or wrong. He's like, you just being on the earth and being alive and walking around, like you have a right to do that. Like, you know, and I was just like, fuck, you know, it was just it was important to hear.
And then you just saw the anxiety tentacles just kind of shorten.
It really, really did. I mean, it turned me in a different direction for sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a cool dude.
He's a cool dude. And I'm excited for you because you don't really know him, right? I mean, you never met him, right?
I've never met him.
So I'm really excited for you to meet him.
Yeah.
He's a little scared because he definitely does not have a filter. Like, I've heard him say some things to me and other people where you're just like, holy shit.
He's in the right place. We could beep him out. We have to beep our own selves out, so.
Right. At this point, I think he's so scared of saying the wrong thing that, if anything, he might be a little too reserved. So,
yeah.
Should we bring him on and let him do his thing?
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for being willing to come do this.
You could be very sorry. I told you it's dangerous.
Yeah, no, I mean, we kind of like court danger.
Well, good, because I don't really talk to anybody anymore.
No. You've always been kind of filterless.
Filterless?
As long as I've known you.
Well, I know things about people in Bloomington I shouldn't know, you know.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, so you have to watch out for that.
So I'm assuming you're talking about, so I'm going to just jump to this thing that I think you know.
Yeah.
But just as a way of, it was somewhere around 1998. And I was, so somebody we both know, Josh, Tina, do you remember Tina?
She lived on Washington in an apartment.
Yeah,
I remember. Yeah. I only met her once.
Okay.
I was in that apartment once.
Okay. So it was really sad. Like her dad had a major heart attack on a boat in Florida. And so I flew out to down to Florida, and then to be there with him. And then I came back and I got dropped off by the airport shuttle at the Indian Memorial Union. You know what I'm talking about. It's coming back to you.
So you're walking down the road.
I'm walking down the road.
On 6th Street. 7th Street. Yeah. And he's got this enormous pack.
Yeah.
It's like, that poor man.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Careful with the knocking.
Sorry.
Yeah. But he, so this like old beige Volvo station wagon pulls like up next to me. It's nighttime. I'm like pulling this big luggage and we're walking home all the way to the west side, you know, and this pulls up and they're like, I think there are two dogs, like two pretty big. Like, what kind of dogs were they? Oh,
Sadie was mostly golden with black lab, and her pup Nico, they were both flea bitten, you know, but they were always went with me.
That was her pup?
That was her pup. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And didn't you? Oh, am I wrong that you said one of them was really sentient and the other was just kind of a dog?
Yeah, well, Sadie was brilliant.
Right. Like you really had a pretty
Oh yeah,
serious
she was
connection.
absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was she the one that would go ride the city bus? Is that right?
No.
But didn't you have a dog that would go downtown?
Well, she would go downtown,
Sure,
and
but-
she became the mascot for the Republicans. I wasn't Republican at that time, but they called me up and said, "Your dog's here. She's our mascot now." And it was at their the voting party at election party afterwards, and so I went and get her, and she spent about a week at RCA in the offices there.
With the Republican Party?
No. These were with different people.
Oh, at RCA.
She went to RCA.
The plant down there on the south?
Yeah. And the secretaries took care of her. And somebody finally told her where she belonged. And yeah, she would do all kinds of things. And she'd take off. They'd take off at a certain time every day for a while.
Both of them?
Yeah, both of them at full speed.
Mm-hmm.
So one night I decided to go check to see where they went. And they went to the park.
Which one?
To the... what's it called? People's Park.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy there and so I parked along the side of on the street. And,
this is from 6th and all the way over on West 6th.
Yeah. Same time every day they'd take off.
Were these your dogs?
Yeah, my dogs.
Okay.
This is in the day. I didn't have any collars. I didn't put leashes on them.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, she could hear the animal sheltered motor, so she'd always come and get inside or hide. She never got caught. But anyway, so they were going down there, and this guy was claiming them and trying to put a leash on them. And so I got out of the car and went over and said, "Well, these dogs?" He said, "Yeah, these are my dogs." And I said, "Well, that's strange, you know." And then he confessed that he was giving them hamburgers.
Oh, really?
From one of the stores down there, fast food places. I don't remember which one. He'd get them out of the dumpster.
Yeah.
And give them hamburgers at this time every day. So that's what they were doing.
Come and get their hamburger.
Yeah. Other times when I was down there, she would sit beside people who had ice cream.
Uh-huh.
And she would never beg.
Uh-huh.
She'd just sit there and sit there and sit there. And they would finally give her some ice cream.
So
she was brilliant.
Yeah.
Just
really
wait
brilliant.
patiently for the ice cream.
Yeah.
And people would say hello to her, but not to me.
Oh my gosh.
So a lot of people knew her, but I didn't know them.
Right.
Stuff like that.
So you got the two dogs, Sadie and Nico, and you pull you pull alongside me. You're like, "You want to ride?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great," you know. And I get in the car, and then I recognize him. I was like, "Oh, this is that guy! Like, this is the guy, like you know, that guy that I would see at the farmer's market." And I think I knew also that he was the guy who lived in the house with the bamboo where you'd hear the piano coming out of it when you walk by on 6th Street, and which I think a lot of people,
Yeah, people would start calling me when I got back. I said, "How did you know I was in town?" "Well, people heard you playing, so I assumed you were in town."
Well, it's funny because it was kind of like a multi-sensory experience walking past your house because, you'd have the visual of the bamboo, you'd have the music, classical piano, and you had the clove smell. Like, when I walked by, it would be clove cigarettes, piano, classical piano, bamboo, and I go, "Are you? So that's you, right?" And you're like, "Yeah, it's me." And everybody wants to know all about me. And then you're kind of like grousing, and then you said, "Okay, just if you want to come over, just stop by tomorrow, and I'll rolf you." And I was like, "I don't even know it." "Okay, but I don't know what you're talking about." And then I didn't know what rolfing was or that you were a rolfer. I just knew that you're this like guy that I had chatted up the market.
Okay, yeah.
And so then you say, "Come over," and so then I come over and you start rolfing me.
Did I?
Which is why, and that goes back to rolfing. You want to tell what rolfing is?
Yeah,
what's
I don't
think a lot of people don't know what rolfing is.
You don't know what rolfing is?
I don't. Yeah. Is it some kind? Is it like massage, sort of?
Massage is with muscles and skin, and rolfing's with the tissue that holds your muscles to the bone.
Okay.
And it covers every single muscle fiber.
And that's the fascia, right?
Yeah, that's fascia.
Yeah.
So what rolfing does is it changes body structure.
Whoa.
So that you can stand straight up, and it saves a lot of energy, and it changes the way energy moves through your body.
Whoa.
And I believe after all these years that it actually is what makes people's personality. So if you get enough of that fascia to release, that it will actually change the person.
That's interesting.
Anyway, I'm not doing it anymore. Very little. I have 2 clients right now, and I limit them to like 15 minutes.
Well, it's really hard on your body, right? I mean,
Well,
it's very physical.
Yeah, I had to quit.
Isn't it the idea that gravity is just pushing down on us all our lives and
Sure.
trying to get in? Is that
Right? It's called entropy.
entropy? Yeah.
Yeah. So everything that in the field of gravity eventually decays because of gravity.
Okay.
So this turns it around so that you can release the effects that gravity has had on you to that point, plus a bunch of other stuff that causes tissue to get tight. And that's really why people are bent over.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
It's because the fascia is holding the bones in that position after a certain point. But we don't know exactly what causes that. We know a fever will glue fascia together, so you lose independence of motion. So when you release fascia, supposedly you get your muscles back and you'll be stronger.
Mm.
So
Wow.
in my case, that was true. It was an absolute miracle for me. So I wanted to be a rolfer, so I finally managed to do that. It's not
And
gonna
now
be,
I want to get. I want to get some rolfing.
I think you would find it really interesting. It's a real trip, man. I believe it changed my life, but
really,
I do.
Wow.
I do. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why I've never really talked about it to you, but like, because it also releases emotional stuff, like, you know.
It can, yeah.
Yeah, or it did for me.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It can change people's person, you know, and all kinds of things associated with it.
Yeah.
And the next day you went there. That was your first.
We just hung out, and then after that was like I want to get back to the Simeon story, but it was a lot of going over to Simeon's at like sometimes 11 midnight, and he would make a full French press of coffee. He came out with a full French press of coffee, cream, which was usually sitting out. The cream was usually just sitting out on a table somewhere around the living room.
It still does.
It still does. And clove cigarettes, and then he'd sometimes bring out like toast and some mango. And it was just like the best. Yeah, you would like bring out toast, mango, and it was the best. It was just like the best time. You know, we just sit around and chat.
And then there was a time that Chris came into my house and sat down one day, and he sat for about 45 minutes. Do you remember this? And so I just sat down. I thought, this is really strange. He's not saying anything. And finally, after all this time, I finally said, well, Chris, did you come over for any reason? I can't remember what the reason. Oh, he said, well, this is like a time zone or a time capsule or something.
Yeah.
So, but I used to have people come and they'd sit in the living room, especially on the 11th Street when I lived there. And I'd look out from where I was roughing and there'd be all these people sitting out there in my living room. It's like, what is it? Do you have an appointment?
That's funny.
No, I just came here to relax.
Yeah, no, he just kind of has attracted.
It's pretty strange.
Just people and also just taking in, you know, just that's a whole nother thing, but just the amount of you've been taking people in the entire time.
It's kind of
including me.
I've basically quit doing that now because when I got back from Arizona, I let street people live there upstairs.
Right.
And I didn't know what meth was.
Oh wow.
I do now.
So you actually had people on meth in your house?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and they use it as storage upstairs and sleeping and probably other things. And yeah, it was pretty bad. So it was pretty hard to get rid of a lot of those people.
Yeah. And
they just steal from one another, basically, I think, and swap clothes. And I don't know what all, but I know most of them were a mess. And it was sad, but, you know, that's the way it is in Bloomington.
Yeah. So, is it cool if can we go all the way back to Farm Boy coming to Bloomington?
Sure.
Because to me, it's just such an amazing. But so you were telling me recently that you grew up at a farm and it was outside of Lafayette.
It was on the Tippecanoe River, just north of Lafayette. I think it's north, and it's about 5 miles between not even that far. It's about 3 miles between the Tippy and the Wabash. And it was a farm, and we had about 20 dairy cows, and I really hated milking. I had 2 older brothers and 3 older sisters. I was the last kid. And so my job was growing the vegetables, basically.
Okay, all right.
And I'd help my mom can tomatoes in the summer. And later, when both of my brothers left, then I helped milk cows. But I always hated it, and I was bored out of my mind. So
yeah, you just never liked it there.
No, I never liked it.
Yeah.
I'm glad I was raised there now because it was a wealth of information.
Okay.
That, I just didn't appreciate it at the time. But now if people have to go to college to learn to plant a beet.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, this is absurd.
Right.
This is second nature to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we just learned a lot of stuff. But we were very poor. So I got $2.75 for lunch every week. And I got 2 pair of blue jeans and 3 shirts and 2 packs of underwear and socks and maybe a pair of shoes and maybe a coat if I was lucky. Mm-hmm. And that was it. Mm-hmm. That was my income.
Right.
for 18 years. So I counted the days until I could leave there. And in the meantime, I was so bored that we did have a piano. It was called the Lafargue piano, which I've never heard of before. Upright old cabinet grand. And there were books in the piano bench, which is called the U.S. School of Music or something. So I just started sight reading. So then
You just kind of figured out how to sight read?
Yeah. Well, I played a trombone.
Oh, you played trombone.
So I knew bass clef.
Mm-hmm.
So
About how old were you at this time?
When I started playing piano, I was 14.
Okay.
So I started teaching myself, and then I finally got a teacher in high school. But my girlfriend said, "Why don't you take lessons from my teacher?" So I talked my mom into $3 a week or something.
Yeah.
And took lessons. And then a neighbor lady got me a better teacher in Lafayette. So she made me play concerto. So I played a concerto with the Lafayette Symphony. And then I came to IU with my girlfriend because she wanted to interview. What do you call it?
Oh,
yeah.
Not was it? Or audition?
Audition, yeah. But she played saxophone at that time. This is a different girlfriend. She was salutatorian, and the first girlfriend was the valedictorian of our class. So I don't know why that happened, but it did. So anyway, she didn't get in, but I got it. I got accepted to IU in a piano performance degree.
Yeah,
but you can't do that because you can't start at 14 and become a famous pianist.
But you didn't have any idea that was the case at the time, right?
Oh no, I did whatever.
Yeah,
just totally stupid.
Yeah, it's crazy that you got in anyway.
Yeah. Well, I was pretty good.
Right, but I mean, just like the odds of this farm.
The odds
kid,
of it are very, very small.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how I got to IU.
Yeah.
And I basically never left because I had no place to go, basically. So, and it was fun. It was during the Vietnam War. So you keep yourself in college no matter what. So you don't.
Yeah.
And I had a brother who was in Vietnam and said, "Don't you dare come over here. You'll die."
Is that right?
Yeah. So I didn't.
Yeah.
But I'd stay in school a long time and just avoid graduating. So I just wouldn't take the last thing that would make me graduate.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
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 So you would make sure like one required course you would hold off on registering for it?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I basically had a master's and I would have had a doctorate, but none of it was in the right, sequence or requirements.
Did your peers? So I'm assuming that a lot of them were coming from fancy places, or maybe or
at that
the musicians, or
at that time most didn't, but a lot of them were very accomplished.
Okay, they started when they were children.
When they were tiny kids. Yeah. So
and they're probably wealthy.
Some of them definitely were wealthy.
Yeah, but not all of them.
No, not all of them, but most had considerable backing behind them.
Yeah, so I guess I was wondering, did they treat you or perceive you as different? I mean, were you this oddity, or how did you plug into that?
Well, one guy called me the Wunderking.
The Wunderking.
Yeah.
So they recognized that you were really talented.
Well, I think word must have spread around, that this person, was there.
Yeah.
But it didn't do me any good because I couldn't play. I mean, I could, but, it was limited as far as technique.
Okay.
It's an athletic event. You have to have incredible, neurons or whatever to actually be able to do that.
Yeah. So, and that's what you're doing all those years if you're a child, is you're training your muscle memory and developing.
They develop automatically. Yeah. If you're practicing, they automatically develop.
Yeah.
So I'm just now getting to the place where I can play amazing things.
Yeah.
And I put a disc on and play with a orchestra. Yeah. But I have to follow whoever the pianist is. And I'm not perfect by any shot.
But you've been doing this. I mean,
it's like you get to have a different puzzle every day, so you can't be bored.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I fix this, or how do I make this better?
Yeah.
But there are people who just play and think it's wonderful, but
But
sometimes
you don't think it's wonderful.
It's very embarrassing. It's like, good God, that person thinks they can play.
So have you been, I mean, I know pretty much most of the time I've known you, you've played for hours a day.
Yeah.
But is that what you've done since you quit music school, or you left music school, or did you have times when you just couldn't do that because you're raising kids and
I
stuff?
couldn't do it when I was rolfing full time, and my hands would swell up so bad that I couldn't even fit my fingers between two keys.
Oh, you couldn't? Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And so I probably took 25 years off.
Oh, you did? Okay, so quite a while. Okay.
Yeah. So I just picked it up again in Arizona, I guess. When I quit rolfing, I started practicing again. Mm-hmm. And I accidentally bought a Baldwin concert grand because I had a credit card. I had a credit card on eBay that I had forgotten.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And somehow my fingers just went deep, 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 deep.
You won.
What did I just do?
Oh my God, seriously?
So the guy calls me up a week later and says, "Did you buy a piano from me?" I said, "Well, I really don't know. Why don't you check and see if you got paid for it?" So he called me back and said, "Yeah, you paid for it."
Wow.
So that's how I started practicing again.
So and just to kind of bring the full circle, it's not full circle, but one of the threads was that things about people that you shouldn't know because of rolfing, right? Because things just come out when you're in this room with this person having this pretty intense experience, right? Yeah,
and the fascination was watching somebody's body change.
Yeah.
And the things that would happen to them, and they'd report back. And the other fascinating part was everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Every one of us has a story. And frankly, if somebody wouldn't tell me any of their story, I'd get very bored.
Okay.
It wasn't really somebody I wanted to rolf, but I would if they had money,
So do you think it was you're about rolfing, or just about you as your personality, that people would tell you stories, and also like Chris came over to your house and sat there for 45 minutes, and you said other people did that too?
Well, not like Chris did. They didn't sit in my presence and be totally silent.
Right.
But Chris did.
Oh, man.
You don't remember that, do you?
No, but
I thought that's really strange.
Yeah.
And
I had some times.
I guess we all have sometimes. But it's like, no, I don't think. Well, the first thing is it's amazingly trusting of someone to, put their body on a rolfing table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And a lot of people really did trust me enormously.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
But because, I'm sorry to interject, but part of it is like, here's the thing, like, okay, massage, you're naked and everything, but this is, first of all, the physical intensity of it, just the fact that he is using his thumbs and pushing really hard into your fascia and stuff, but also just the places his hands go. Like he doesn't have to stick his finger up your butt, but it's basically right. Well, no, but right, it's right behind your your anus, right, where you go into the what do you call
it? Pelvic floor.
The pelvic floor, which is a huge part of rolfing, right?
It is, because it releases the lower back from the inside.
Yeah.
So you can't release the outside so well if you can't release the inside. So you'd have to do the pelvic floor in order to release the inside from the back.
Mm-hmm.
So then that also releases, you got 3 layers, the back muscles, exterior back muscles. You've got the pelvic floor, which the tissue goes right up on the inside of those back muscles, inside your abdominal cavity. And then you've got the psoas that goes all the way from the leg up to the 10th thoracic vertebra. So that's complicated.
It is. Where was it that you released the psoas? Because I thought that's what you're doing when you're doing the...
No.
What?
That's behind the psoas. Psoas is through the gut.
Through the gut. Oh,
right. And it's actually a leg muscle, but if we didn't have it, we couldn't stand up.
Yeah.
So animals also have it, but they're still on all fours.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very complicated structure around the pelvis and the psoas. The psoas is the primary, the biggest piece of the rolfing.
Right.
Because if you can get that to lengthen, then persons can automatically you can actually lift your spine out of your body.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, not remove it, but go upward.
Wow.
So it's complicated, but you're welcome to come over and.
Oh, you're getting an invitation, Josh.
Well, he said he wanted to do. He said he might want to try it. So
yeah.
I used to beg people to try it. I used to cry on the street when I'd see some people
because you could tell they looked like they needed.
Oh yeah, but really? You really can't walk like what I did to him. I would never do that today. Say, come over tomorrow and I'll,
right?
I just did, but
not to a stranger.
I was so excited about it. It was such a miracle to me that I wish everybody in the world could get rolfed, frankly. When I was about 10, I was very distressed about my family being there.
About your family being there?
No, my family. I was just about my being with my family.
Okay. But you're 10?
Oh, yeah.
So you knew you did not belong.
From 7, yeah.
And that was you as opposed to your siblings. Like they didn't have the same experience.
They don't have a clue.
Okay, but when you were 7, you were like, I don't belong here. This is not, nothing is right anywhere. Strange.
That's really interesting.
Well, I had what someone else said, angels who took care of me.
Yeah. So
it gets crazy.
Well, what was it like what was it like being that young of a child and realizing that you don't belong where you are?
Well, it put me on a very long search.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 10, I was at the back corner of our property under a huge sycamore tree, and I could formulate what I thought should be, and I can't put it into words now because I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And a voice said, well, this does exist. So I was told at that point that this did exist.
What did exist?
Well, that's what I can't tell you.
This thing you can't say. Okay.
I could conceptualize it at the time, but I can't conceptualize it now.
And you're just alone out by this tree.
Oh, yeah.
You're under this tree.
And I'm very distressed. Yeah. And so I found it when I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when I found it, my whole body just jangled.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a huge body response. So then I became a member of this thing, which is, supposedly the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is a God,
mm-hmm.
it is the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
that organization or it was called the Grace of God. Like that was the name of the.
It's actually called Susila Buddha Dharma, and the contraction of that is Subud.
Okay.
And the man who it first occurred to is this huge light came out of the sky, and he thought he was having a heart attack. It entered his body, and he went home to his mother's because he wasn't married yet, and he thought he was having a heart attack. And for the next 3 years, his body would move and spontaneously, and he would receive all sorts of things. And the stories are wild. And these are things I probably shouldn't say because they're just like, my experiences in this would sound like fairy tales to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is and I know I'm not even asking this. This was drug free, right? Because that's just not what you were up to.
I had never done any drugs at all.
Completely just you're having this spiritual experience. Yeah.
Right. And I never even did any drugs through the 60s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I was violent. I was just opposed to drugs totally. And later I found out that when I was rolfing, people would tell other people who were going to get rolfed, don't you dare tell him you smoke.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah.
Because he won't rolf you.
And
we're talking weed.
Yeah.
Because I'd smoke clove cigarettes all day long.
Yeah. It's that straight farm boy just can't handle that.
It was just terrible.
Crazy.
I was such a prude in so many ways.
Were you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many ways.
And you probably came by that honestly, right? I mean, were you raised that way, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It was religious?
What, my family?
Yeah.
No, never.
No,
we never went to church.
No, but they raised you as a prude.
Yeah, they raised me as a prude, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you didn't say anything. We were probably mostly autistic.
Oh.
So not much was ever said. It was, but you were disciplined through really severe looks.
Mm-hmm.
And I never stepped out of line. I finally learned to lie in high school.
Mm.
I'd lie and say I was going to some rehearsal to get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could get by with that for 2 or 3 times before, before things got bad.
Okay.
When you had that feeling when you were 7 that you said you had that feeling that I don't belong here,
Everything was wrong. Nothing was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Did it ever like fade away, or did you were like, yep, I don't belong? Yeah.
Never did. It never did.
Yeah.
Not while I was there. And actually, I'm still living out part of that.
Yeah.
My fantasies are still actively working, that the world can be a better place.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm still working on that.
Right. So you still don't completely feel.
Oh, no. I mean, look at our streets. I mean, look at everything. It's just, that was my own personal experience on the farm. So I wasn't looking at anything like that. I didn't have anything to look at. I just knew everything was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And these aren't my parents. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing right in this world.
Jesus.
It was bad.
It is bad.
There are other people who've had that kind of experience. So I'm not alone in that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But the stories I've heard from my clients that I robbed, I thought my parents were saints for a long time. Is that right? Yes, I did. Compared to the stories I heard from a lot of clients. I mean, almost everybody, not everybody, but almost probably 90% had basic horror stories to tell about their childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are the people who put themselves on a rolfing table.
Yeah, right.
They try to everything else before they get to my table. For the most part, that's the people I had. Some of them, even a couple of them had diphtheria, typhoid rather.
Okay.
Which just totally ruins tissue. You can't rough it. You can work at it, but you cannot get the person free. And I'll never rough somebody who had typhoid again. I think I had 3 of those people. But yeah, they try everything and then they finally try roughing. And a lot of people have it really rough. So yeah, I thought my parents were saints until I started, really examining it a little closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you told me, I don't know if something you want to get into, but you told me just recently about your first memory with the egg.
Yeah, it wasn't my first memory, but yes, it was.
Or was your early memory of just your dad's?
That I realized what had happened. Yeah. I kept seeing an egg yolk on the floor while I was robbing somebody. So that's really bizarre. Why am I seeing an egg yolk? And so it only happened once, and then maybe a month later, it happened again. And then I remembered, as a child, must have just started to walk, and my mother was at the stove with her back to me, and she had an egg on the table, and I guess the floor wasn't quite level. And I asked, "What is this?" I asked a lot of questions when I was a kid, and especially little. And she said, "Oh, don't touch that." But I had already touched it, and the egg started to roll, and it landed on the floor, and what I saw was an egg yolk. Right, and I was fascinated because I'd never seen an egg yolk before. It was just amazing to me. And then my father got up and came over, and she said, "Oh, don't do that. He's too little for that." And he knocked me out. And so I woke up behind the wood stove. So that was one of the things I remembered, probably as a result of being robbed.
And now, a Mellencamp moment.
So here you ready?
Yeah.
John Mellencamp.
What about John Mellencamp?
I don't know. You tell me.
I didn't know John Mellencamp, but I did rob his drummer.
Kenny Aronoff.
Kenny and his wife at that time and his son.
Yeah.
And
all of them.
Yeah.
Did Kenny have any John Mellencamp stories while in the midst of getting rolfed?
Well, no. Kenny liked to wrestle.
I wondered if you were going to say that.
And Rolfing Kenny was like, working with a bear or something. It was like, it was amazingly fun because he was very, he had no reservations about his body. So it was like, okay, this guy doesn't mind contact.
Yeah.
And he said that the dentist always said he had to stay in the chair in order to get his teeth done because he couldn't do his teeth if he kept getting out of the chair. So he was like that.
Jesus.
It was like wrestling with your brother. I have fond memories of Kenny. So Kenny got on some huge talk show in Chicago, and I can't remember this famous guy's name that did this talk show forever.
Was it Letterman?
Yeah, Letterman. So Letterman told him to call me up and ask if I minded being mentioned in reference to rolfing and Kenny, and I said no, don't do it.
You did? You did?
Really?
I said, don't you dare.
Really?
Yeah.
Why didn't you want that? You just...
Well, I mean, he just made jokes about it.
Oh, I see.
Letterman
Right.
just made jokes about
Right.
it.
So did they end up talking about it?
Yeah, they did. I heard it.
Oh my God. That'd be amazing to find, Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was fun. And his son was the same. He's kind of a wrestler, and but not nearly like Kenny was. But
I'm so glad that my memory served me, because I just remember you saying that it was like having a wild animal on your table.
yeah, it was. It was fun though. Yeah, but I don't know how much rolfing we actually got done, but some.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing all this.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's really fun.
It has been fun. Thank you.
It has.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, this is fun, and you feel free to delete anything or all of it.
No, we got some good stuff. I will edit it down just a little bit, but no, we got some good stuff.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. Cool. Because I don't want to embarrass anybody that's still alive. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Do you want us to get rid of the Kenny wrestling stuff?
No, it's all right. He won't mind. He won't mind at all.
Okay. Because that was a pretty good story.
Yeah. It was fun. Okay.
All right.
That's it.
All right.
Done.
Thank you, Josh.
You bet. Thank you.
And if you actually have the nerve, you can come over and I'll give you a sample of raw.
I know what I'm gonna do tomorrow is I'm gonna spend some time on the internet researching it some more, and I think
cool.
Yeah.
Isn't it literally ROLF?
ROLF. Yes.
Yeah. Rolf.
Yeah.
ING, rolfing.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Josh.
It's considered by massage therapists to be very invasive.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to hurt to get better.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just, they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's okay. We'll let them have their massages. I might get some myself. All right. Thanks.
Right on. Well,
Good night, Josh.
Thanks again. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person at some point.
Cool.
All right.
Night,
Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
What'd you think of Simeon?
See, I think he is such an interesting interview, an interesting guy. I didn't know anything about. I had no idea what rolfing was. I knew it was like some kind of massage or whatever, but his story was really, really interesting, I thought.
Yeah, man, it's pretty wild. Rolfing it's seriously, it's a really weird experience. It feels like kind of like torture.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
If you're sitting
torture right on real close to your butthole, right?
It's like close to your butthole. And when you're sitting, and I didn't even tell you, like sometimes this is crazy. Like he's right. You really have to trust this guy, the rolfer, because another thing he would do is stick to, and he has these badass, his fingers are like stubby and strong, and he would stick them in your mouth and stick them up on the roof of your mouth and put serious pressure. Like it's almost like he's trying to lift you up by two fingers inside your mouth.
Jesus.
It was crazy, but you could feel it changing like your skull and stuff. I mean, it's really, I don't know.
Describing it does sound like torture rather than something that I would want to do.
Totally.
But the way you guys both talk about it, how it actually like changes the way you think or feel is really, really interesting.
Yeah, man.
Just his whole story, the piano, and he's got his like spiritual background is really interesting.
He actually there's a bunch of shit. I gotta just tell you a few things. One thing is that I really wanted him to be part of my wedding because like I said, he's definitely like my spiritual godfather guy. And so I was like, oh yeah, but my friend James, who was the performing the wedding. He comes in internet license and all that. So we asked Simeon to do the blessing. And usually Simeon
was like, take off your pants.
Yeah, it was kind of like communion. Like he had everybody
Open your mouth and take off your pants.
Right.
Got two fingers going in your mouth, two fingers right next to your butthole.
That was actually at the reception. That was
okay.
So he gets up there, and the crowd is, a lot of them are just our friends who, they can handle whatever. But, but also Simeon, he also he's not the kind of guy who dresses up very often. He's usually just kind of wearing like pretty low key stuff, like whatever. But he like wore a suit, and he's looking pretty sharp, and and he gets up there, and all I remember, it was an absolutely beautiful blessing. I was just. For being in a wedding, how you're just kind of in another place mentally when you're getting married. Man. You don't remember anything. You
almost, you don't remember anything.
Don't remember who you talked to, what you said. Right. I remembered this because at some point he asked the audience to participate, and he had everybody do this kind of meditation where they leave their bodies and all go out to space. And I don't even remember how this was tying into us and our wedding, but he has everybody go out to space, and I just remember looking at the whole crowd, and like good percentage of them were participating. And
that's awesome.
It was all about the blessing, and it was pretty out there, Yeah. And then afterward, Jane's dad, who's like this kind of pretty, just straight Lutheran man, comes up. He was like, "That was a very nice blessing. Now, what denomination are you?" It's like that was a good one.
That's funny.
Also, there's a story that I wanted to tell you about Simeon that is what it's a weird story because it's just a strange tale that hasn't to do with it's just a thing that happened anyway. So when I was younger, and even now, but when I was younger, I didn't know how to do anything, like I could not, the way I explained it was that I just didn't know how to do anything. Like I couldn't fix anything, I didn't know how to use tools. I didn't know how to measure shit. That was so far from my skill set.
You probably knew how to be a little bitch.
I knew I was so good at being a tiny little bitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
that you couldn't do, you spent all your energy on being a little bitch that you just didn't have any energy to learn anything else.
I'm pretty sure by the time that I was like 25, I had already put my 10,000 hours into becoming an expert little bitch.
Yeah. I do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
But I knew you back then, and I'm fairly sure that you were pretty good at it too. From what I could tell.
World class. Blue ribbon little bitch.
So this little bitch was getting rolfed, and he didn't have.
Did your mom ever get rolfed?
So I was definitely a little bitch, and I was getting, but he was rolfing me, and he was doing it. It's not cheap, I mean, it's hard, it's just his profession, it was like $80 an hour in like the 90s, and I didn't have any money, and so he was kindly, like giving me breaks or doing it for free, just all these things. And I was like, man, I got to make this up to him someday. So there was this time when I think his roof was kind of a mess. Like he bought this house and it just had a lot of work. He'd had it for a long time, but it needed a lot of work. And he decided that he needed to replace the roof. But he didn't want to get a permit because he knew that was going to open up this whole can of worms just about the house and what, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so he decided he was going to put on a new roof over the weekend so that,
by the time business opens up, it's done.
Just new roof,
Yeah.
And I got to admit, I was kind of thinking that's pretty ambitious, Yeah. And he had like a couple guys coming to help, but they weren't professionals. And I said, and I think I offered, or he asked me, but I was like, oh, this is great. This is my opportunity to like give back.
Right.
But he didn't really understand how incompetent that I would definitely call it incompetent. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't just not knowing how to do stuff. It was not being very good at learning how to do stuff, like measuring stuff and stuff like that. And so we were up on this roof, and he's getting over the course, and I'm just trying to find things I can do, like I'll run to Lowe's for you, or I'll clean this mess up, or anything I can do that didn't involve any skill. And at some point, he was like, "I need you to start like cutting 2x4 or whatever it was." And I was over there just trying to do whatever I was supposed to do. And he'd be like, no, what are you doing? Like, because he was just stressed out because he really wanted to get this done over the weekend.
Yeah, right.
And it was like September, it was hot up there, and it was just, things weren't going well. And he was just like, no, what are you what are you doing with that? That's not how you measure, whatever it was, And I was getting kind of pissed because I was like, man, I'm up here on this roof voluntarily doing this shit, and I'm getting yelled at over and over again.
Right.
And so just a quick side note, as Simeon mentioned and we talked about, he was constantly taking people in, just like they would live with him. He would nurse them back to health, often psychological, often physical. And there was this guy named Tom who was this kind of very soft-spoken, pale face, strange cat who lived with Simeon for a long time. And Simeon rolfed him, and he really kind of, the way it sounds from both of them is that Simeon kind of brought him back to life from whatever shit he'd been through. He'd been sick and all his things. And Tom ended up like going to the West Coast and becoming like a successful tech guy and getting married. Like he really, but at the time he was just this kind of like mousy, pale, funny little guy, little glasses, and he's up there. And so he's working on the stuff up on the roof while Simeon and is yelling at me and stuff. And finally I just walk up to Simeon. I'm pretty close. Like we're staring at each other and he's holding a hammer in his hand just by circumstance. And I go, why are you fucking with me? And he's just like, gets this crazy look in his eyes, and he's holding this hammer over his head, and he just had the hammer, and he's kind of like gesticulating, but with a hammer. He's like, I am not fucking with you. And he goes, I get paid not to fuck with people. And I was like, wait a minute, like I'm the one that's getting yelled at. Now he's getting mad at me, And I'm like, you're yelling at me about hammers and not knowing how to measure stuff, and I'm up here and I don't even remember the context, but it was just like we were having a serious and that hammer. I was looking at that hammer. I was like, he's going to clock me with that? I had no reason to believe that, but he definitely had a hammer, and it was definitely over his head, and he was definitely like yelling and freaking out. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to resolve. This is really weird, and I was kind of scared, and it was intense. And then also,
is this here in Bloomington or in Arizona?
This is in Bloomington, before we moved to Arizona. And all of a sudden we hear this voice that goes, I think I know the problem. And we both kind of stop and look over, and that's Tom. And he's literally still down on his knees, still whatever position he was working on something on the roof. And he says, well, back in the day, fucking with somebody meant that you were like fucking with their head, that you were getting in their mind and you know what I mean? Like manipulating them and fucking with their head, trying to actually fuck with their head. Okay. And he goes, but now it just means like giving somebody shit or, like too much shit. And, that's why Simeon said, it's my job not to fuck with people because, his job is to heal people. And I was,
so he took you, why are you fucking with me as like
my mind.
Yeah. Okay.
And Simeon goes, oh, okay. That makes sense. And he's like, it's just like his whole body language. So he just relaxed.
He put his weapon down.
And he was like, oh, yeah, okay. And I was like, oh, man. Like, I was still just like fight or flight. Yeah. And I got it. And I just remember I just kind of like said, I got to get out of here. And I just kind of went over to the ladder and went down the ladder and, took a couple weeks to.
Took a break.
Yeah. And actually, when I got home, I remember I was pretty shaken up. And again, just for the listeners, like this is not typical of Simeon. We all have our bad days, and he was super stressed out about this.
So did you guys ever talk about the roof situation after that, or did just time sort of heal it?
Time healed it. We've talked about it since then, but it was definitely like, I just remember I think he didn't realize how super stressed out he was about, because, it's kind of a tricky thing when you're trying to like get one over on the city. I don't think he'll care if we include that story. It's not one of his prettier moments, but it was just such a memorable thing.
It's a human moment.
It's a human moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I can totally see how he and Mary Sloan are pals. They there's a lot of similarities. It seems to me like they both, I think you said it best. I can't remember what you said, but like kind of refusal to abide by norms of
like societal norms.
Yeah.
That's a really, really, really good point.
Yeah, they're cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, man, that's interesting because he's totally like that.
Yeah,
like he has really not played the game,
right? Which has made his life super fucking interesting,
right?
I think. I mean, from my perspective,
I agree.
Yeah. And he took time off playing piano and just picked it back up. And what I also loved about him is how old is he?
He's probably like 76-ish.
76. Mm-hmm. But he's still like clearly has goals. Like he's like really like he's figuring out how to improve his piano playing. That's amazing. Like, I don't think I'll do that. Like, I don't even now, now I'm 49 years old. And I don't think about how I want to improve my bass playing. I just learn the songs and, it's really inspiring. He's inspired. The listener doesn't get to, just see him, but they just get to hear him. But he's an inspiring guy to me.
Thanks for listening to Bloomington Stories. If you've got any hot leads for guests or topics, please send them our way at bloomingtonstoriespod@gmail.com. And come back and check out our guests on the next episode of Bloomington Stories.
Hey, before we take off, I wanted to give a shout out to our friend Ty Price up in Indianapolis. He's always been real good at spinning a yarn, especially as we've had a few beers, and he's given us some his valuable 2 cents on podcasts. And so thanks to Ty. Maybe someday he'll start an Indie Stories.
Bloomington Stories is a podcast produced by Chris Cooper-Smith and Josh Bennett, with new episodes released on the 1st of each month. Please consider subscribing, rating, reviewing, and following. Please see our show notes for more information on our guests.
You're a fixer, a sprucer-upper, a home service pro. So why waste time buried in admin and paperwork? Get back to what you love with Jobber, the all-in-one tool that fits your entire office in your back pocket. Start your free trial today at jobber.com.
Drink Sierra Nevada, and you'll taste more than beer. It's flavor that takes its time, from our meticulous brewing process to the legacy of craft in every pour. Taste for yourself today. Sierra Nevada. Taste what matters. Please drink responsibly.